Commas up from the outside. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to John Duffy Speaks. I'm your host, Burger King. Corpus Christi native and Brockhampton co-founder Kevin Abstract is easily one of the most inventive voices to grace modern hip-hop. No one in Brockhampton realized what they had started when they revolutionized the approach to the rap landscape, but once they started to get the ball rolling, there was no escaping the massive impact that the group would have. And honestly, they're one of my favorite rap groups of all time. All American Trash was a decent opening mixtape effort, but really it was the absolutely locked-in, now classic 2017 releases of Saturation 1, 2, and 3 that cemented Brockhampton as a household name in the industrial indie rap sphere. And following Amir Van's sudden departure, which I won't deliberate on, the band was really never the same afterwards, and it makes sense, he did commit some pretty heinous acts. But the writing has been on the wall since Iridescence and Ginger that this wasn't going to last. The Technical Difficulties radio tracks were fire, and Roadrunner New Light New Machine was a huge highlight, but the band's final two records in 2022 had them ending with a thud, both being misguided projects that showed a deflated interest from everyone involved. But at the same time, Kevin was striking out solo, picking up where he left off with MTV 1987 and American Boyfriend with Arizona Baby, which contained solid team-ups with Jack Antonoff, Dominic Fike, Ryan Beatty, and other Brockhampton-adjacent collaborators. And while his 2021 solo tracks Sierra Nights and Slugger maybe didn't hit virally the way he wanted them to, overall they were solid, inflected with Childish Gambino and Travis Scott influences that felt like an extension of the Brockhampton brand. 2023's Blanket shed that perception immediately, with indie rock undercurrents that are not my favorite among his discography. But then last year, through linking up with Quadeca on production for his Glue mixtape, I think Kevin started to find his path in a musical sense, and now with this newly formed group of Blush, consisting of multiple different artists, but Kevin as the curator, way more of a curator than Travis Scott on Jack Boys 2 if you ask me, we finally have a real, clear viewpoint of where Kevin wants to take his artistry. Quite possibly the most eclectic palette that Kevin has ever worked from. The central production credits, like Kevin has alluded to, truly emphasize a collective musical experience, but Kevin fixates his vision to an overall sound that tethers the album together, so none of these tracks are predictable, boring, or lacking of visceral qualities, and instead they're all just cohesive. First, H-Town is a fairly moody opener, benefiting from those chilling, decadent keys that rise above the mix, granting the song an emotional core that immediately sucks us in due to Kevin's vocoded bars. Copy is also pretty airy with its spacious atmosphere, accentuated by its galactic synths and staccato hi-hats, and Yoko Ono has a touch of JID and J. Cole in its soulful sampling. Then there's NOLA, which is just a beast of a composition, manned by the great Quadeca for one of the best songs that Kevin's ever released. It's this marriage of Iridescence-era Brockhampton and heart-thumping apocalyptic dance beats that are destructively industrial, loaded with unwieldy levels of character and its creepy, chaotic synth passages and haunting group vocal samples in the background. Speaking of, I really love the Brockhampton feel of Post-Breakup Beauty, 97 Jag, and Text Me. However, the indie pop rock embellishments of the Dominic Fike-assisted Geezer and Maroon, and the Derby track I Wasn't There, are stellar in how seamless they are, and still feeling light and levitating like the other tracks here. But I really love how it's Kevin, Quadeca, and 40Hz that close this thing out with confidence, with the final run of Pop Out Through Red Light, featuring astonishing production flourishes, especially from the Quadeca solo track Abandon Me. So I truly think that Quadeca, Kevin, and his extensive list of collaborators have crafted something that feels makeshift, lively, and like it could fall apart at any moment. A piece of Kevin's music that made Brockhampton so compelling. So this comes across as more refined despite its fractured Life of Pablo DIY nature. The opening poem really sets the tone for the kind of album that we're going to get, and we dive right into Kevin's mental state on H-Town, where he champions himself and his willingness to persevere despite the strife that he's had to deal with. The lovelorn tone of Copy and Danny Brown's profound verse on Danny's track lend the lyricism a level of seriousness, taking on a theme of the gratefulness of the gifts that life offers, as you start to actually embrace your truth as a person. Post-Breakup Beauty conversely deals with the mourning and the desperation to rewind the clock, something that Kevin also explores on 97 Jag and Text Me, with an angle that's simultaneously regretful and resentful. But I found Kevin's biggest strength in his songwriting to be the way that he wrangles all these dense, vulnerable themes into a formula that churns out immediately catchy hooks and intriguing song structures that are instantly memorable. NOLA is absolutely insane with its main refrain, heightening the mania of the track's instrumental with an arrangement that's complementary to the atmosphere that Quadeca has created. And the Dominic Fike tracks like Geezer and Maroon feature a swanky, energetic, and loose approach to storytelling that's enveloping and instantaneously commanding commanding. I thought Amir Van's verses on this project were constantly engaging and compelling, full of semi-reflection and I don't give a fuck energy that I think feel pretty human and in line with the ideas that Kevin's trying to push across. So while not all of the movements work on this record, and it can be a tad too sprawling at times, it's the cohesion and clarity found in tracks like Abandon Me that strip this project bare with a rawness most artists wouldn't be able to articulate in this way. First and foremost, there's a lot going on in this album. Overwhelming on its first listen. This might be the closest we've gotten to a Brockhampton record since their dissolution, and I love that group work is what makes this album fly. Once you get past the abrasiveness and the juggling of elements, you really start to see the vast talent that's on display here, including the guest verses of Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia, a welcome return from Amir Van, stellar supporting work from Sogan Soflexi and Love Spells, and standout performances from Quadeca and Dominic Fike. What allows it all to stand on stable legs, though, is Kevin Abstract, because he's always finding a way to blend styles of delivery that mimic Childish Gambino, Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott, even Kanye West to an extent, but it mimics those artists as much as it does Nirvana and Fontaine's DC, oddly enough. But what separates his work on this album from imitation is his unwillingness to bend to genre norms on his vocal inflections, often shifting between rugged, unfiltered, and untouched singing, and processed, auto-tune heavy vocals. His bars are also pretty cutthroat and strong, too, but he never loses that ability to connect and throw himself into uncomfortable territory. And though it may not always work for me due to the blemished aspects of songs like Post-Breakup Beauty, along with others that might be too spare, Kevin feels comfortable in his identity, and that confidence shows in his unique voice.
Gold in my hands, gold in my heart, gold in your hair.
With 18 tracks at 45 minutes, this album is probably the most time-efficient record of Kevin's entire career, and one of the most time-efficient records of this entire year. I would say the pacing of the front half isn't as solid as the back end, but once this record picks up, it really does not slow down. The opening run of H-Town through Yoko Ono unfortunately has some starts and stops, and I don't think Danny Brown's solo track fits in with the progression of these tracks. But once we hit NOLA, Kevin really hits the ground running and doesn't look back, due to a slew of catchy, wavy, ingeniously produced jams, like Post-Breakup Beauty, 97 Jag, Text Me, and Geezer. Personally, I would have preferred Maroon to follow Geezer, as I Wasn't There fits more with the back end, but that's just a personal preference. Everything from Pop Out through Red Light is endlessly interesting, almost playing like one long composition and how unified its ideas feel. So even though there's hiccups, Kevin keeps it a smooth listen that never fails to be magnetic.
I'ma make it worse if you wanna act up. So what you playing for? I can make you jealous. First wanna back it up, rub it in your face.
Yeah. I think Blush is the best thing that Kevin's ever made on his own, and probably the best Brockhampton alum album since the group disbanded. It's vicious, it's in your face, it's heartfelt, and above all, it's an extremely entertaining album experience that makes me excited for how Kevin's going to leverage this Blush group moving forward. But hey, that's just my perspective. If you're a Kevin Abstract fan, this is a great record. And if you're in the hunt for a progressive rap project that's unwieldy and raw and rough around the edges in the best way, you're going to want to check this out. Alright, that's all I got. Bye!